Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley. This is another Shropshire church. This is the Church of the Holy Trinity, Sidbury. This is a very ancient building, perhaps 11th century. However, most of the old fittings were lost in a fire in the late 19th century, so it's been rebuilt, and even the old font has gone and had to be replaced with a Norman imitation, an imitation Norman font from Victorian, again because stone and fire, if you have a lot of fire around stone, you've got falling roofs and things, well, basically the font's destroyed. So there's a very good reason why this is basically a Victorian interior, but it's in a much, much older church, and we'll see that particularly when we go outside. Well, let's have a look around then. So here we are, as usual. We start at the west end here in Sidbury, and here is that font that you can see. It's quite a good imitation Norman work, but it's much too crisp to be genuinely Norman. Like I say, everything medieval inside was destroyed in the fire. There is a nice chancel arch, which again, it looks like a Victorian restoration, although it is at least trying to look slightly transitional. Very nice oak pulpit, relatively low. It looks like it's actually been lowered. The high pulpits go out of fashion, you see, and there's the harmonium with its modern replacement, that modern keyboard in front of it. The chancel, this is again a very small building. It's still that Norman two-cell structure. And all the woodwork is Victorian or later. Quite decent woodwork, really. We can turn around here. You can see some old stonework there in the window. See, the wall has that batter that is quite common in Norman walls. I should say it tapers from the bottom to the top. It also looks like it's leaning outwards, this one. It probably is. There's the old Norman west doorway, now blocked in the wall, and big later windows pierce the north wall. Through here is what is now the vestry, but what was formerly a private chapel. This was partially spared in the fire because it is structurally separate. And we have here the Cresswell memorials. We have, first of all, Anne is the widow of Richard Cresswell, and the beloved wife, rather, of Richard Cresswell, and she died in 1705, aged 84. And then we have Richard himself, and he died in 1708, aged 88. Got those. And here we have a photograph from the morning after the fire, and you can see externally it's very largely. Thankfully, the Cresswell memorials are spared, but it was wrecked. You lose the roof, but here we have the rebuilding, and yeah, you can quite understand why here nothing is older than the 19th century inside. It's an interesting one. A sum of £200 invested in 5% stock was given by Catherine Purslow Clutterbuck in memory of her husband John Bayfer Clutterbuck of Sidbury Hall, 23rd of April 1925. The interest be used for church expenses in perpetuity. Of course, that sum of money went a lot further back then than it would today. A lot of these, unfortunately, investments were rendered worthless by the Great War, and then the Second World War, more inflation. We have there the remains of the medieval piscina, and again the east window. So all the interior is gone. You saw how the whole roof had gone. So that's the inside here at Little Holy Trinity, Sidbury. So we proceed back along towards the font, and these very typical seats of the period. It's going to have been rebuilt. There will have been economies, shall we say, made in the rebuilding, because there have to be. So there we are, inside here at Sidbury. And so here we are outside at Holy Trinity at Sidbury. Again, it's this typical Norman two-cell structure, nave, chancel. The belfry, you've got to have someone to keep the bells, and if you've got a tower, this is what you have. And this is a traditional Shropshire way of doing things. There's a porch, of course. Porches become very important in the Middle Ages. And as we have a look around, we'll see some features that indicate the age of the building and also alterations during its long history. Not only, of course, the changes that resulted after the fire. As usual, it is the south side that is the main entrance front. You can just see there on the south wall herringbone masonry. Now, some of that is reconstruction, but some of it isn't, and you can probably tell which is which. Herringbone masonry is an indication that something is 11th century, maybe older. So this is a very ancient building in parts. Now some of that reconstruction, of course, is going to be to do with reconstructing after the fire, but some of it is to do with other things. We have the very plain south doorway here, sheltered by the Victorian porch. And there we have more of that herringbone masonry, memorial of Henry Page, his son Edward, Amelia Page, his wife of Henry, and so on. So various members of the Page family. Here we have the west wall and a really good array of herringbone masonry there. I mean, this suggests, again, with the plainness of the door, actually this is an Anglo-Saxon building. Have we got long and short work on the corner here? Because some of the corner work has actually been renewed, but not all of it. And long and short work is a typical Anglo-Saxon. Yes, we do have some long and short work, so that suggests it's an Anglo-Saxon building. There, of course, is the chapel out on the side now, the vestry, and we've got the Victorian window here, and the older medieval window in this red sandstone that's really eroded quite significantly. And then again, this herringbone work, lots of herringbone work, whereas the chapel here has been built in nice ashlar masonry, which again you'd expect in the 17th, 18th centuries if those memorials are anything to go by, and I suspect they are. So that is Sidbury. Only small windows at the east ends of the two, but good enough. It's an unusual building, and as I say, as we saw, in fact, rebuilt after a disastrous fire that completely took the whole roof off and gutted the building. Hence, as we saw, the interior is very much Victorian, because everything pre-Victorian was destroyed by fire. So that is Sidbury. And so Holy Trinity Sidbury, another example of these little Shropshire churches, these two-cell buildings, nave, chancel. In this case there's a later chapel that's been added, but still hasn't really been much enlarged. And this is the kind of building that most medieval churches would have been originally. This one shows every sign of being Anglo-Saxon, and originally they've been like this, tiny little buildings. Important because they're made of stone, but otherwise they're not the most. They're buildings that to us aren't very impressive, but to the peasants at the time would have been incredibly impressive. This is proper, good quality stonework. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you until next time.